You can take a job that you use your brains. And if you use your brains, you can do that the rest of your life. The only caveat to that is find something that you can get paid to do using your brains that you really enjoy. Don't take a job that you just go to and just mindlessly do it because you'll never be happy. And then that happiness goes to your family and everything else. You can always come back to your back. If you're doing a job using your brains and it falls through or something unplanned happens, you can always take a job swinging a sledgehammer. Yeah. It pays.
Welcome to Jobbers, American Energy, the podcast that tells the untold stories of the people powering America. I'm your host, Jason Case, and each month we go beyond headlines to meet the folks keeping our country running, one job at a time. Let's get into it. Charles Strait, thank you for doing this. Thanks for joining the pod.
Thanks for the invite.
Well, just to give a quick overview, we'll start off with some fun questions just for the audience to get to know you, get the brain warmed up, and then I'll give a brief overview of your background, and then we'll just get in and kind of carry on, discuss your story and why you worked in the industry so long. All right, let's get it started. So, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
Okay. What's one of your favorite restaurants in your hometown?
Probably Cactus Flower.
Cactus Flower?
Mexican restaurant.
Okay, so shout out to Cactus Flower. All right. Favorite TV show or movie currently?
Going back, the movies that would probably impact me the most, probably Jeremiah Johnson comes up in my family conversation quite a bit.
Okay. Well, tell me about it. I'm a big movie buff. I haven't seen that one.
Then it's an old Robert Redford mountain man. He was in the wars between the states, and he came out to the mountains, or maybe even been the war before the war between the states. But he comes out to the mountains and learns to be a mountain man from an old guy, Will Greer. You might recognize the old actor. And there's just a lot of sayings in it where, like, a good example would be, he put coals under his mat and under his blanket and started to spend the night. And then he woke up, he was on fire. And the old mountain man looks up and said, "Yep, I knew you didn't put enough dirt on that," but he didn't tell him that. He just knew it. You know, he's like, the old whiskers guy's like, "Oh yeah, like you should have put more dirt on that."
Been there and done that.
And so there's a lot of those kind of things in the movie. One of my dad's favorite sayings that they have in that movie is, he says, "Can you skin Grizz, Pilgrim?" He's like, "Oh, I can skin any Grizz you blame." And in the scene, he's running for his life with a grizzly chasing him, and he runs and he goes right through the cabin this guy's in and dives off the back window. He looks at her and says, "Okay, skin that one. I'll bring another one." So now the guy's in a log cabin with a grizzly bear, you know? So
it's like a movie with a bunch of old Western wisdom.
Yes. A lot of wisdom. And my family will spout them just at verbatim a lot, you know, like, "You really think you could do that?" "Yeah, I think I do it." And then you're like, "Okay, prove it."
Yeah, prove it. Any TV shows that you like right now?
Modern TV shows haven't really impacted me. To me, I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm focused on doing other things. But when I saw this as one of the possible questions, I said, what series actually impacted my life probably the most will be different than most people. It was the Carl Sagan series called The Cosmos.
Okay.
When I grew up in 70s and 80s, Carl Sagan put out this series called Cosmos that every show was just fascinating to me. It really got my mind started in pretty much the direction I took, because he talked about how there's more galaxies in the universe than there are grains of sand on every ocean in the world. And every galaxy's got, millions of stars and stuff. So to me, you think, well, geez, no wonder, we're just a small little thing in this great vast place. And to me, that there was just so much fascination for that. And the time period, Star Trek and all those was the popular TV shows. So everybody talked about, oh, I'm going to travel from here to some other place. So it really got me on my start thinking, okay, from a science standpoint, can we get there?
Yeah.
So I was really interested in that. So I would say that TV series by far impacted me. And I've turned it on now and, wow, it was pretty hokey. It was 70s technology.
Yeah, 70s technology, but still good information.
Yeah, so it's good to go back and look. But I'm like, oh, it really impacted me. And then we look at it again, like, oh, boy, it's a little rough now.
All right.
It was good.
Well, I know you spend a lot of time on the road, so you're probably not reading while you're driving because you're very safe on the road. But what are some of the good audiobooks that you've recently listened to?
Most of the audiobooks that I listen to are, I think his name is Eric Johnson. motivational people. I think it's Eric Johnson.
Yeah.
This is one of them that I catch a lot because he came from almost nothing, multimillionaire now. And what does he do? He tells people how to improve yourself. And it's not some magic stuff. It's like, it's just all about work. I'm going to work the other guy. So I'll listen to a lot of his stuff because in our job, a lot of times it's how well can I outperform the other guy? And you personalize it that way. It's not some big bad company you're going against. I'm going against their salesperson or their manager. I got to beat him. So I listen to a lot of that kind of motivational stuff, and a lot of it, of course, military, because I was in the military. So a lot of military stuff saying this is how you do a job, So I listen to most of those kind of audiobooks.
You grew up in a 4th-generation ranching family, and then you decided to listen to the Air Force and landed at Lowry Air Force Base. That was from 85 to 89. And then from there, you received a computer science degree while working at the Air Force, and then you went on to study engineering. Then you get into the work field. You end up working for Big Oil at Texaco. From there, you transition over to Bellray, where you're managing the North American mining division, also working in South America. And then you go over to Petron Corporation, which is international, and you're working engineering, technical services, upper management, and you're all over the world for those guys. And then after Petron, you ended up working in management, technical services at ROC, and a couple of the certifications you got along the way were the coveted CLS, also certified reliability engineer, and a really long list of other certifications that I won't get into now. But what was it like growing up in a multi-generational ranching family, and how did your dad take it when you said that you wanted to go join the military?
Well, a little background. My mom was raised in a ranching community in southeastern Colorado. The town is called Model, which a town is a generous term. It's a post office and like 3 buildings. And until recently, I'd never been there, and I lived 100 and some miles away. And really dirt poor farming, ranching community. My dad was born in Fowler, Colorado, and we have a ranch north of Only Springs.
Yeah.
Again, farming, ranching, heavy farming, agricultural region. So everybody meets at the one cafe in town. Only Springs is a town, I don't know, it's probably 200, 300 people. And they're all old ranchers and farmers that can no longer work on the ranch. So they buy a place in town.
Yeah.
So they all meet at the one cafe and talk. So you spend a lot of time there and you learn a lot about ranching and farming and stuff. And so it was a very good upbringing. The part that came to my mind when we were talking about this video is, all of those people listened to a guy named Paul Harvey at that time period. He was a radio announcer and stuff. And if you ever want to learn about small town USA, he's got one small video out there. It's called So God Made a Farmer. And it really gets into the detail of what these people's life is like. It's an amazing detail, like what it's like to just be a farmer or rancher in the U.S.
And that's Paul Harvey?
Paul Harvey.
God made a farmer?
On the 8th day, God made a farmer.
That's awesome.
And it's a great thing. And so I grew up in that environment where you got up early. We listened to Paul Harvey first thing in the morning. And then we didn't listen to stocks like a banker. We listened to the farm report. What is the price of soybeans? What is the price of beef in Chicago?
Yeah.
Every day. That's what you base your life around because that was your livelihood. And the thing about ranching and farming is that you can't get out of it. My dad, we took one family vacation my entire youth. We went to El Paso, Texas for the weekend. That was it. That was the one family vacation that we ever took. And because ranching and farming is so tough to make money at, a lot of them have to take supplemental jobs. So my dad took a supplemental job that paid the most. And you use your back. It was at a steel mill that's near my hometown. And he worked there. He ended up working there 43 years. But that was his supplemental job.
Yeah.
To help pay for the other stuff he did. And when he first started working there, they would work him like 6 months of the year. And then it'd be like 6 months a year as hard as he could work. And then it's like, oh, now you're laid off for 6 months. Said it worked really good to have this other job to fall back on. But when I was young, he swung a 35-pound sledgehammer for 5 years for 50 hours a week. And it was hard work.
Yeah. ranching and working at the steel mill.
So it was tough. It was really tough on him, and he never ever complained. He just in his way of doing things was always, you either do or you don't. He never wanted to hear you try. Try was not really in his vocabulary. You did it or you didn't. And that's how he brings you up, and I have one sister, so we both grew up in that same kind of environment that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. It's like, did you complete the task? You did. And if you didn't, try again. It wasn't okay, good enough. So that was a different environment to wake up in and every day and work hard. And of course I went to school, and the school doesn't even have a name. It's just a county high school. It's called County High School. I don't even in most schools you get really nice names like, FDR High School. It's named after somebody. No, I went to County High School. So but all of those kids at this school were all sons of ranchers and farmers and stuff. So it was good. And what you was asking about. So probably the toughest conversation that I had, it was my dad set me down maybe 16, because I graduated at 17. So he set me down and said, you got two choices really in life. You can take a job where you're going to use your back, and that job's going to pay well. And someday your back's going to be wore out and you're going to be old and decrepit. Look at half the people around here, farmers, ranchers, steel mill. Or you can take a job that you use your brains. And if you use your brains, you can do that the rest of your life. The only caveat to that is find something that you can get paid to do using your brains that you really enjoy. Don't take a job that you just go to and just mindlessly do it, because you'll never be happy. And then that happiness goes to your family and everything else. And it was probably some of the best advice he ever gave me, because he said, you can always come back to your back. If you're doing a job using your brains and it falls through or something unplanned happens, you can always take a job swinging a sledgehammer. Yeah. It pays. Yeah. So that was very good advice that he gave me. But then that led into the next conversation that we had, which was tough for him. He's like, okay, what do you think you want to do with your life? And I was like, I've never been anywhere. I've lived within so many miles of this house my whole life. I'd like to see other things. And he was very open with me, which is very rare for my dad, where he said, I was the same way. I wanted to be a biologist. I wanted to be in the mountains and work for like a division of wildlife. But it wasn't in the cards for me. I had to take a job with my back because I had a family to support, and we had to do this. So he didn't take that path. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what are you saying? He says, well, you got a couple of choices. You can keep going down the same path, and you'll be a mirror image of me, which he'll be perfectly happy with. Or he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I think I'd like to go do something else. So at that particular time in my life, I always thought I wanted to design aircraft. So I had set up myself that I wanted to go to Florida State and be an aeronautical engineer. Talked about it since 6th grade. And my entire time in high school, I took every math class and science class I could take. I even took classes at the local community college while still in high school, because I took all the classes the high school offered, and I wanted more. I took classes and stuff, and it hurt me a little bit in the sense that back then they didn't have honors classes. So if you got a B in differential equations at the community college, it went on your transcripts as a B. So in my high school class, I was barely in the top 100 for like GPA. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. I was like, well, I'm taking these tough classes and they're tough. Yeah. And nowadays they give away.
They weight them differently.
They weight them much differently, because my son just got to high school. Yeah. You take that class now, they give you all these plus. You can have a better than 4.0 GPA. Yeah. I was like, well,
you can have that weight. Yeah.
I wish they would have had that. But we waited, and the steel mill was down at this particular time. Ranching was terrible in the mid 80s. They were spending every dime they had just to keep things afloat. And we just had a really good talk. And I talked to my dad and said, it doesn't look like college is in my future. He's like, well, at that time, they didn't have the loans and stuff they have now. And if you grow up in ranch country, you don't borrow money you just don't borrow money
from the bank. It wasn't the government that was giving the money back then.
You don't borrow money unless it's absolutely necessary. You do without, or you make things work. So we just decided, no, I don't have college in my future. There's no money there. So I signed up for the Air Force. And then in 1985 was the first year they forced you to take these college entrance exams. I was like, well, I'm ready to go. But hey, I'll take the exam. What the heck? It was something they'd made the juniors and seniors start in 1985 that we're going to take. It was the ACT. I guess it was about the ACT. And I got a 35 in math and a 35 in science and a 20 in English, which my wife loved to talk about. But so I get these scores back, and now I'm getting all these colleges sending me this information. Come to our school. 35s are really good, because I'm like, well, I didn't get a 36. 36 was the top score. I was like, I want to get the best score. Like 35 is really good, son. That's what they're trying to tell me. I'm like, well, what does your college have to offer me? They said, oh, well, you would have to come up with like $10,000. You'd have to come up with 12. We'll give you a little scholarship. And we had a conversation, with my folks, and they're like, oh, we don't have that. So I said, oh, well, at least I know where I stand, So I went in the military, and it was a good conversation. I think my dad was the proudest parent, because he said, you weighed all the pluses and minuses and said, you have to leave what you know and go out into the world and try to do something different than everybody in our family's ever really done.
Yeah.
So it was a good conversation. It's probably the toughest conversation, though, because I think my dad wanted me to follow in his footsteps and stuff. And later on, and I'm running on a little bit, but later on, it helped, because when I finished my Air Force and I got that first job, I didn't like it. I had enough thoughts from my upbringing that this is a job you don't like, do something else. And an opportunity came up at the steel mill. And I said, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to work with my dad. So I changed, and I went to the steel mill to be what at that time they called a reliability engineer, which nobody even knew what that was at that time. And I said, now I'm working with my dad. And you can ask my dad today, it actually bothered him a lot more when I started working with him, because he was in this environment for 30 years where he saw people lose hands, fingers, maimed, killed. At one time at that steel mill, it was a number like 17 to 20 people a year die at the steel mill from safety. And safety got better and better, but still,
it's a dangerous job.
It's a dangerous job. And he was scared for me now, because now I was in that environment. And he's like, oh man, now it bothered him a lot more that I was working with him, because they saw where he saw where they were putting me. I'd crawl under equipment that was running, had molten bars going over, but the bearings down there, I need to go see it. And he's like, I don't know if I'd go in there, and stuff like that. Working around equipment where people didn't know the dangers and would just blow up. They had acetylene lines and stuff blow up, and just people died. So I think that bothered him a lot more when I started working with him. He was like, oh, I was okay when you were somewhere else, and that way you were me. And probably the one other take I'd get from working with him at the steel mill was everybody that worked with my dad had nothing but good things to say. He's like, oh man, he's the hardest worker we ever had. He had this image that he would put out. And because of that, I felt like I had to live up to that. I'm like, well, geez, yeah, I don't want to eat lunch here. I don't want to be caught sleeping over here somewhere. So because of that, I was like, oh, I got to work extra hard here.
Turned it on.
So that was a good part in my life where it came full circle and stuff.
So if I understand correctly, I think it's almost divine intervention. You get this opportunity to work with your dad. And even though your dad loves his son, I'm sure he's still proud that you are using your mind and your body to a degree. You probably just didn't like the fact that you're in a dangerous environment doing it. How do you transition from steel mill to getting involved in the oil industry?
People say it's lucky sometimes and stuff. I've had very good luck in my life. When I went in, and I regressed a little bit, I went into the Air Force. Computers was a new thing long before your time, I'm sure. I went in 85 when you had a lot of senior people that had went through Vietnam, and they saw the bad in war. War is bad. No two ways about it. It's a bad business. It's a business where we take our youngest, brightest people and put them in harm's way. And by 85, all those people from Vietnam were toward the end of their careers. So I ended up with some great mentors, people that had lived some really bad things, but then came out of it. And so when I started in the Air Force, they're like, well, we have this new technology that we don't really know what it's about. It's all these computers. You got to remember, at this time, they didn't have personal computers. So the first job I had was at the finance center, where they literally had 4 levels of this building that were sub-levels that you couldn't access. It was all top secret. And they were the size of a super Walmart that were just the computer systems, 4 levels. And they're like, oh, we're coming up with these new things called PCs, and it's going to be on your desk. I'm like, wow, what a great jump in technology. But the people I was working with, they're like, oh, this is way past me. They didn't have digital anything. So for them, computers was far beyond them. But I had these mentors that said, okay, master this. As a guy that's been in the military 30 years, he doesn't need to, it's past his prime. He said, you as this young person, learn this technology, master it, get good at it. And at that particular time, we just spent, and I told you in the past, we spent billions of dollars because if you grew up in the 70s, it wasn't when we were going to get blown up by nuclear weapons. It was going to happen. It's just, you expected it. Everybody, if you look at the movies and stuff from them, it was just a foregone conclusion. We were going to
go to nuclear war.
Nuclear war. And our response was, if they send 100, we'll send 1,000. It's the old, you like movies. It's the old Sean Connery movie and the mobsters. If they put one of yours in they break your arm,
you put them in the hospital, or we put them in the morgue.
Yes, that was that
mentality.
We'll send 1,000. We're going to totally annihilate them. And we spent billions of dollars to develop this technology to shoot down ICBMs. That was going to be our savior. We were going to be able to shoot them down. So even though they shot them, and we'll probably send some back, they won't have the technology to shoot ours down, but we're going to shoot all theirs down. And they spent billions on it. And when it was called Star Wars, if you remember history. And when it didn't come to fruition, because somebody at the very end finally said, well, we tried to develop this laser and it would take 7 nuclear power plants running simultaneously to generate the energy to shoot one of these lasers. Like, this isn't going to work.
Not viable. At the time, not viable.
At the time. And that's where in all of my life, it's always about timing and position. And in this particular time, the timing wasn't there. The technology wasn't there to create this. So they came to our area and said, okay, what can we do with what we just spent all these billions on? And I said, well, I just spent a year and a half pretty much mapping out the world using longitude and latitude, the whole world. And we didn't have enough computers to do it efficiently, even with the fanciest computer system the Air Force had, because the world's a big place. And we start talking about mapping inches of the world. It's big numbers, 168 digits by 168 digits, and you're moving them. So we didn't have the technology to do it. So there was a company called Cray developed what's called a Cray supercomputer. And they found that if they used gold and put all these processors, which had been developed, all stacked in this thing, it was fast enough to do it. So the technology was there suddenly. Like, oh, hey, we could do this in real time. So if we can map the world in real time, what can we use it for? And the first general that we had in office said, oh, well, we need to do save our pilots. Pilots have no way to communicate except an old fashioned radio when they get shot down to come be picked up. So they said, well, why don't we use something so pilots can communicate? And that's where we developed a PIN, which in essence is what's now considered a glorified cell phone. And that signal gets broadcast up into the noise band. And then someone in another place has these crystals and says, oh, I can pull out a noise band and actually communicate with you. Yeah. In this case, it was just a beacon. So it was pretty much the tracking system that we use in our maps on our phones all the time, but it would save pilots. I'm like, well, this is great, but who all gets this? And like, oh, well, only people worth it. So one of the ironies of this whole thing was that they said, oh, pilots are worth it. Generals, they're worth it. But it got down to my level, like, oh, I don't think so. We'll just replace you. We can always bring another kid in to teach your job. So I was like, well, that's kind of irony. Yeah. I'm building technology that
isn't going to save me.
It's save me if I'm in a bad spot. But by developing that technology, that's literally where global positioning came from. They said, we got to be able to find pilots anywhere in the world. So if they go down, and where the Navy came up is the Navy's still using sextants. They're like, hey, we're out here in the Pacific using sextants. Can we use this technology? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to know where we're at exactly in our ship anywhere in the world? Like, well, that'd be great. Until they was worried, old Russians might get a hold of this. So I can't tell you how many meetings I had with top generals and stuff, because at that time they'd moved me from the finance center into people know as NORAD. It was the place for this kind of information to be gathered and stuff. So I was in NORAD, and these generals like, well, as long as they can't have some Russian shoot a rocket based on your coordinates, that was all they was worried about. How do they keep it from getting in the noise? Because again, cellular didn't exist at that point. So they was like, how are we communicating without wires and lines? And it just goes up there. These other people can't hear it. No. So it was an interesting dichotomy, I guess. But so that's where global positioning came from. It started with the Navy. We put up 23 satellites. They were called NASTAR satellites, which stood for the Navy satellite system. So we could track the Navy. And it really turned into a great job for me because it had never been done before. And for me, it was interesting because a lot of the stuff that we were working on and stuff was stuff that a guy named Nikola Tesla had said could happen 100 years before. And Nikola Tesla doesn't get the credit for it because he worked for a guy named Edison. Yep. And that's similar. I ain't gonna say similar to my job, but very similar to my job. I did a lot of the code that really set this stuff off because I could envision what they was trying to do. And then the lieutenant colonel that I worked for, he's the one that took credit for it in all the reports. He's like, yep, my team, they're the greatest team we ever had. They took care of this. And he went on to form a company called Garmin, which you've probably heard of.
Yeah.
So he was one of the people that started Garmin. But when I was in the Air Force, they pretty much said, if this ever gets out what you're working on, you're going to be in Leavenworth, Kansas, breaking big rocks into little rocks until you die.
Yeah.
So it was this top secret. Of course, the group I worked in is still in Area 51, so I can't tell you half the people I work for because we never were allowed to talk to anybody else. Yeah. That's at your little silo. But that's the same division of people I work with. They're made for people that are trying to push the envelope in technologies and stuff that don't exist now. So it was a great, great job. The only problem was the mental brain drain, I guess is what you would call it. One of my flaws is when I try to do something like that, I can't shut it off. And I had a great mentor in the Air Force. He was a chief. He had been in Vietnam, and he took the time to take me outside a lot of times. He's like, Chuck, let's just go outside. And I thought, he wants to smoke. So we would go sit on a park bench outside and just look at the sun and the wind and the flowers. He's like, when was the last time we slept? I said, what day of the week is it?
Yeah.
It could be Wednesday. I haven't slept in 3 days. I've been writing code 24 hours a day for 3 days straight. He's like, you can't do that. You feel like you're bulletproof because you're 18, 19. You can't do that. You have to be able to let this stuff go. And it was very hard on me. And I did see it because I was in it.
Yeah.
But I'd go 3 days and you forget to eat. They're like, when was the last time you ate? I was like, I don't know, but it was at least a day or two ago.
Yeah.
And he said, you just can't do that. And because he was a good, strong mentor, and that's, I guess, the strength in my career is that I've had good mentors. I've had people that said, okay, this is how you do it. This is the way to do it properly. And it's really helped me through my life. And that's why now I'm really trying to pay it back.
Yep.
You big movie buff, pay it forward.
Yeah.
My job now, I feel, as I've reached this part of my life is to mentor in all ways. It may not be a young person, but just mentor people and say, okay, this is
add value.
One way that you can do it, but there's another way you might be able to look at doing it. Here's a different way. Try this and see if it works better for you, because every person life's different, and you might find that the message that you're telling them, it's a good message, but it might not be a message they can hear or understand at this particular time in their life. So you find that other way to say a different message is, okay, does this make more sense to you? And a lot of times you get that aha moment where like, oh, yeah, that I can do. So I try to use that. And it's, again, because every company I've worked for has had good mentors, every one of them. And because of that, it almost feels like to me that when I share their knowledge, I'm sharing a piece of them, which keeps them going. Because most of them, by the time you get most of them are gone. There's a few of them that are still around, but they're getting out there.
It's a big reason why we're doing this. I tell everybody that comes on, first of all, your family should know your story, because all of us are going to take that long walk west one day. And, I'd give anything to be able to call my dad, talk to him, hear his voice. And it's not the same, but you still get an opportunity to see your dad's voice or your grandpa's, face, and hear, hey, why did he spend 30 plus years working in this industry? What did he love about it? Because if you didn't love it, you wouldn't have done it for so long. To your dad's point, right? Find something that you enjoy. It's a job, it's a career, but you find enjoyment in it every day. And that's why I love what we do, because what we do touches everything. So you're growing up a rancher, going into the military, get this opportunity at the steel mill. You get to work with your dad, which is awesome, even though he was probably a little afraid that you're in that type of environment. The reliability engineering, how does that end up applying to the oil industry? How do you go from reliability engineering at the steel mill to end up working with big oil at Texaco?
So at that time, reliability engineering wasn't actually a degree you could get. You were a mechanical engineer, and reliability was considered a part of that, like a subpart.
Yeah.
And how the person brought it to me was, your job is to find things that break and go to the root cause. What caused it to break? So that way it doesn't break on the next one. Or what can you implement so that we don't have these things break as much in the future? So for me, it was just like going back to puzzles and a challenge. I'm like, okay, how did this break?
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure, what caused the break, and was it a part, or was it a person? Is it practices, or is it physical parts that this part isn't good enough, and so forth? And I found that such a great stimulation for me, because then it was like, okay, now I need to learn more. So now it's like, okay, I need to learn about these parts. I need to learn about manufacturing. I need to take classes. And I did. I went and took a calculus-based statistics class. Why? Because that tells me of all the parts that are made, how many are going to break without you doing anything? The part by itself, 3% of these parts when we make them are bad parts. And I was like, well, that adds a lot to the equation.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking every part made must be good. And like, oh no, when we manufacture these parts, we've done the numbers, 3% we make are terrible. They don't work. And I'm like, oh, well, 3% is that. Well, how many are not as good as 100%, So
Yeah.
I really always pushed myself to learn more and more and more. So the lubricant side of it came in primarily from the money. The people willing to pay the money was the ones that are like, okay, our equipment's not working. What's the first cause? A lot of people, you've been in the business long enough. What's the number one cause? People say, oh, it must have been the oil. It must have been the lubricants.
Yeah.
It couldn't possibly be our operator, It had to be the lubricants, And in the steel industry too, it was funny when I'd come up to stuff. I'd come up and I'd look at a bearing and I'd say, whoa, that bearing got pretty hot. It's blued. So blue in coloring means it got 600 degrees.
Yeah.
It's pretty hot. Then I'd look at the grease. Grease looks pretty fresh. I'm like, man, we better bottle this grease. It must be the best grease Texaco ever made, because it got 600 degrees. It didn't even discolor.
Yeah.
This is fantastic grease. And I'd look at the guy. Did anybody add grease to this? Oh, no, we would never do that. Oh, okay. But that was where you play that little cat and mouse game. I'm like, you want to blame the lubricant, but I'm pretty sure there was no grease in that when that bearing got hot, So we'd play that cat and mouse game. But it really inspired me that the lubricants company is the lifeblood of most equipment. If you're going to be in reliability, lubricants is the first part of it.
Yeah.
There's not a machine out there that doesn't have lubricants in it. So then you spend all your time going, okay, well, what's new in lubricants? Why are we using a formula that's 50 years old? Are you telling me that they haven't came up with something since then? So that was always that challenge. And I always pushed people at all the companies I've worked for. It's like, okay, what's the better mousetrap? Why be a me too? Why make a product just like the one they made 30 years ago at another major oil company?
Yeah.
Because just because they invented it 50 years ago don't mean it's the best. It will always be the best from now on. There's got to be a better way to make a better product. And that better product means the equipment lasts longer. And that's been my drive, I guess, for now 30 years, because I've worked for a lot of, and it's why I've left the Texacos. The Texacos are like big government. They're tough to move.
Yeah.
You could have the greatest ideas and say, hey, I want to make a product that might work in this application. And they're like, here, fill out these forms. In 3 or 4 years, we'll do a test. 5 or 6 years, we might market it. If we can sell 1 million gallons of it, we'll sell it. So I've been drawn a lot more to family-owned, smaller oil companies. And nowadays, they call them specialty lubricants companies, because that's how they make their money. It's like, what is it that the majors aren't making that we can make and make a lot of and make good money at? So I've been drawn to those kind of companies.
Little anecdote to that point. Last night we had the family over, and I had shown my daughters just a little clip from Ford versus Ferrari, where the Ford, beats the Italians, and they're like, "Yay, America!" So they're like, "I really want to watch that movie," and I'm like, "We don't normally watch like adult movies with our young daughters, but it's a pretty wholesome movie, and I like it because it's like a capture of time in America." And there's a scene, right, where Shelby comes in and he's about to get canned by Ford. And it's like, he basically has to tell a story that's going to save his job, right? And he tells that story, and he talks about it, and he focuses on a lot what you just said. And like after it's done, he kind of inspires, Henry Ford II, and he walks out and he shows him the assembly line, and he's like, 3 out of 5 bombers came off that assembly line during the war. He's like, this isn't the first time we went to war with the Europeans. He's like, go to war, Shelby. And it was just awesome, like, to see that.
What I like about that movie, because I have watched the movie, it's a good movie, is that he could have told the guy through a lot of reports and stuff about the car. He's like, yeah, I could have gave you stacks of reports how great this car is. He's like, let's go for a ride. Puts him in the car, and that guy's screaming the entire time. He's like,
they're weeping at the end of it.
And he's like, that's where your money went, right there.
Yeah.
He didn't need to show him all these books and all these reports. He's like, this is what it takes to win at this. And he's pretty much like, yeah, let's build this car.
Yeah. And you need the right driver behind the wheel to handle that machine.
It's how I've done some of that kind of stuff in my career here, where we take new technology. I don't want to name drop too much, but when I started looking at ways to improve some like reliability in open gears, they came up with this thermal technology, which we were using in electrical. And I am an electrical engineer by degree. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat technology. I bet I could use it for open gears, and some of these other checks that I do. And the company I work for is like, I don't know. It's a lot. Yeah, that's expensive. I said, well, buy me one camera. We'll see if it pays out, So they bought me an entry level camera. I showed them just like the Ferrari. I showed them all these things that their eye couldn't see, but they kind of thought they'd been in business. I'm like, yeah, I think this is something that
a suspicion that they can't prove,
but I could prove it. And pretty soon they're like, okay, well, if you're going to prove it, you need to put it in magazines so other people see that you're proving it. And then some of our competition had to start following what we did. They never talked about it until we did it. And then suddenly now it's in their literature like, oh yeah, me too. We do this thermal imaging also. So it took off. So I was like, okay, that's great. And it's really morphed into stuff. Now you see it all, everywhere. Infrared imaging on bearings and gears and everything. It's gone everywhere. And we was the first ones to really kind of publish a lot of that. So it's like a feather. So then when like these 3D printers came out, plastic printers, I said, hey, there's a use for this. There's a place that we can use this. And they're like, we're not going to do it. So I had the wife buy me one as my Christmas gift. Because, I'm sure just like you, anything that you really want in the world, either you save for it or you've bought.
Yeah.
So Christmas is always a tough around our house. Like, what do you need? There's nothing I need.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, my company probably could use this technology, but
they just don't realize it yet.
Yeah, they don't realize it. So she bought me a 3D printer. And when I started printing some of these models and stuff of customers' equipment, the sales just went through the roof because customers like, you looked at my equipment and you drew this up on AutoCAD and printed it out, and now it's sitting on my desk and I can take it apart and we're not out there risking our lives in this noisy environment. Like, yeah. He's like, how many of these can you make? Like I was in assembly line. I was like, I can make you one.
Yeah.
We give these to new customers.
Yeah. I don't have a shop of elves doing this for me. Yeah.
But it really morphed. And now I'm seeing that technology take off. I saw some just the other day where this guy had this beautiful, I think it was a gyratory crusher. All the parts look like the actual parts, because they got multiple filament printers and stuff. I'm like, what a great way to teach the younger generation. And I did a magazine article again on that technology is being absorbed now by the Navy, not the way that we would typically think, but they're actually using it to make parts. If you think about, you want to buy a part for a Navy ship, it has to be made somewhere and then has to sit on the ship because the ship doesn't come back in. And nowadays they're using this same technology so they can make brass gears and other metal gears on the ship.
Yeah.
So they just have to have the map. And I'm like, well, in the big scheme of things, it's what we would need if we ever want to go to space. Say we want to populate on the moon and make a mining, camp on the moon. You have to make those parts there. They can't ship them. You don't have time to ship them. So
yeah.
I think of it from like a Napa standpoint. You can imagine there's going to be a day, hopefully in my lifetime, you can go into Napa and they say, oh, what year is your car? It's a 24 Ford. Okay. What part do you need? Okay. And he just goes over and hits print and prints the part up. So you're not stocking 1,000 parts. They just print it up for you and hand it to you. It's coming. The technology's already there. And that's where that timing comes in.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be there for that because I think it's going to be very interesting to go through that aspect of life. I know that we were like in that fundamental stage and they were just thinking, what can we do with this kind of technology?
Sounds like a few pillars in your story. And your dad's advice, find something you're going to enjoy doing. Think that you've been spot on with spotting technological development. And also what sort of culture do you want to join? We talked about the Ford versus Ferrari, and part of my favorite part from the scene where he basically keeps his job is where he's sitting in the lobby waiting to have this meeting, and everybody's passing his report around. And he's talking to Henry Ford II. He's like, that red folder has passed through 7 different hands before it got to the hand, and now they're going to provide it to you. And he basically says, like, you need to trust me. I know what I'm doing. And he says, go to war, right? I'll give you what you need. So I thought that was good. And it sounds like that's some of what you were trying to avoid with big oil companies such as Texaco and maybe some of the other ones. So what did you like about that more family kind of petroleum jobber culture versus this big macro corporate culture?
In the family culture, you can make so much more of an impact every day. When I come to work, or in any of the last companies I've worked at, you knew if you have a good idea, it happens to the bottom line now, not decades down the road. The big oil companies, they play the long game. Mobil has a 30-year plan that says, okay, over 30 years, we're going to grow this much of a percentage, and we'll help our investors and stuff. And we're going to have this much market share. In a family-owned company, you're only going to be good as long as the leadership is good. And sometimes the leadership will get older, or they get bought out, and then the whole dynamic changes. So in this particular piece of time, you're like, okay, how can I impact this company now? We're talking the 1-year plan, 3-year plan. How do I bring a lot of revenue or whatever? How do I improve this company now so they're here for the long term? How do I improve the sales team? How do I improve the operations team? And sometimes a lot of my training, I like to use analogies that people already understand. You can't learn French per se if you don't know the English word dog. If I tell you dog and you don't know the word dog, I can't teach you French word for dog. So I use a lot of analogies when I do training and stuff that's obvious. They use all the time. Sponges, sponges holding water is much like soap holds oil in a lubricant. But even at that, I a lot of times like to use analogies like, well, this has been tried in the past and it failed miserably. What did they do wrong? It wasn't that their idea was wrong. It was their timing wasn't right. And so a lot of times I try to really help companies like, our company and other companies I've worked for is timing. And the hardest thing I think in these family owned companies is you have elite people in certain jobs. And in a big company, there's no people are owed a position. They just put the best people they can in the job. In a family-owned company, a lot of times like, oh, we owe this guy the position. He's been here the longest. He's been here 20 years. So if we have a position open up in upper management, we got to give it to this guy. But they don't spend as much time looking at it going, is he the right person for the job? He might be great at the job he's doing now, and he might love the job. And because he loves the job, he's there and he's working hard. And then we promote him to a job above that level, and he struggles at it because it's not the job that was best for him. And I've experienced that twice in my life. Like, say, when I was the number 2 person at Bellray working for a person that was one of my mentors, loved the job, thought it was great. What I didn't see was how much, as my boss, he would take the heat for me for things I did. The decisions I made would risk money, and he'd never even bat an eye. I would put money out there. Oh, we're going to spend money here. And then it would come to fruition. But he would take heat for that, never pass it down. I never knew I was getting in trouble for that until I became his job. And then it was just never ending. I was like, wow, this job's terrible.
Yeah.
Because it's all in the office and having to try to prove, well, I'm trying to make them money. I was like, that's not good. So twice I've been promoted to this upper levels. And both times I got there, I said, man, I can do the job. Sure, it's a job. And like my dad, what I said, brains are back. It's brains, but it's not the job that was really for me, because literally I left the stuff I enjoyed to do the job that I was like, oh, I'm destined to do this job. I climbed that ladder and I got all the way up there and I was like, wow, it's a different job up here. It's a different view. It's really not for me. Now, is there other people that could do the job? And that's what I ended up doing. I was just like, hey, I would rather you hire someone to do that job. Put a business person in that job. You have somebody who wants to look at spreadsheets, and work with the stock market, go for it. There's people out there that love that stuff. It just wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I found myself, and that's why I keep coming back to these more family-owned companies, because there's typically always that niche in there that you're not quite leadership, that you're in meetings all day discovering the bottom line, but you're not the lowest guy either. You're high enough up that you can mentor people and bring them up to a level that they've never even thought about before, because their opinions matter. And I think that's an important part in a family-owned company. Everybody's opinion matters.
Yeah.
And if they're scared to give that opinion, then the culture's not quite right. I want people to tell me their opinion. Now, will I come right to you and or upper management tell them that opinion? No, because sometimes they share stuff with me they don't want to go up.
Yeah.
But that's where my job is to say, okay, if a lot of people feel this way, maybe we need to change the culture. We need to change how we're doing things. And sometimes it goes back to the training. It's maybe they perceive something that upper management's doing when really they're not. Upper management, a lot of times, because they're in a different location, they're like, oh, well, I think this is what we're doing. And it's not anything that the upper manager thinks about.
Yeah.
Because we're all trying to strive for that same thing, which is to make this company money, or whatever company you're working for. We're trying to make it last.
Yeah.
It's a family-owned company. So family-owned companies, you want them to last. Will it be here for my kids?
Yeah.
And most family-owned companies have kids. They have kids they want to pass it down to, much like a family ranch.
Yeah.
So you have that same do no harm kind of aspect. Whatever you do, ranching is a perfect example, and there's people all around us that's done it. Once they reach a certain age, you're like, okay, I don't have any kids anymore. I'll sell off my water rights. A ranch without water rights is no longer a ranch. And they've done it. They sell their water rights to a big city, and now their ranch has just turned into this weed farm, and nobody lives there anymore because they don't have water to make it. You've killed the ranch. And so that do no harm works the same in the oil industry. If you work for a family-owned business, sometimes it's do no harm is the most important thing, because they want to pass this down to their children and their children's children. They want, their company to be an important part of society long after we're gone. So our job is just to be that caretaker, saying, how much can I make it? And you look at through history, you had the Rockefellers, you had all these people. And a lot of times the original guy was just this workhorse that just, tough at Ford. You bring up Ford, tough people, and they had to be. And then their kids a lot of times weren't as strong because they didn't have to be. Daddy was the strong one. But then their grandkids sometimes are like, oh, the company's on the way down. Their grandkids had to be the strong one. A lot of times they're like, oh, we have to pick up the pieces because we're taking the dive. And I've never owned a company, but because I come from, like, say, a ranching background and stuff, you have to have that same mentality. You don't go spend and buy new trucks. I'm sure new trucks are $120,000. My dad would flip if he ever thought we were going to buy a new truck for $120,000 to drive on rough back roads.
Yeah.
Because he's like, can you really justify that cost? You buy a used truck that somebody else bought for $60,000 and just beat it to death. You can buy two trucks.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that mentality I have. So it affects me in almost everything I do. I always, and I've talked to you several times. I like to know where the company's going, so that way I can get direction. And then it's okay. How do you do no harm? How do I help every person in the company be a little better than what they was doing before? And if I can't do it, who can do it? Who can I talk to says, hey, you ought to work with this person and help bring them up? Because just like a sports team, we're only good if everybody's going the same way.
Yeah.
And I use that analogy a lot. I brought it up to the people just last week. I was like, don't get mad at our operations people. Operations is like the defense of a football team. If you've ever played football, they're the defense. Their only job is to make sure that opposition doesn't gain any ground on us. They have to hold the ground that we've earned. That's their job. They can go get some business, just like a defense could go get an interception and score for you. But that's not their job. Their job is to hold the ground. The sales department, marketing, and most of the people in this house, our job is to go score points and win games.
Yep.
We're judged by how many games did you win. And I talked to those people just last week. I said, look at that poor guy in Cincinnati. He had the most yards of anybody that's had it in a long time, most touchdowns of anybody in a long time. They didn't make the playoffs. Did they consider a successful season? No, because he didn't win the game.
Team success. Yeah.
You know, he had all the personal stats. He had all the numbers. He didn't win the game. And we're judged on winning games. And to win games, we got to score points. And in our field, it's customers. You have to get more out of the existing customers, which is your easiest way to get gains.
And you do that by adding value to the customer. Anybody can sell fuel. Anybody can drop oil on a dock. But if you can get out there from a reliability engineering standpoint, or, you know, having a focus on this environment and the application in this environment, you can add a lot of value to the customer, not by just giving them the product, but like saying like, hey, here's how we operate with this product in this environment, or here are the safety concerns of this product or this environment. And you can start adding value. And then you get out of this kind of customer vendor type of relationship, and you get into more of like a partnership with them, because you're like, hey, I'm adding value to you. You're definitely adding value to us, because without customers, none of us have a job. So you want to keep those guys happy. And it's not always about getting that next customer or landing that whale. Those are exciting and those are wins. And like, we celebrate those wins in this environment. We love winning. But start with winning with what you have and going, are we adding enough value to that customer? Or are they just going to go, this is a vendor relationship, you know, like somebody that sells me peanuts at a baseball stadium. Those guys aren't going to stick around because you're not finding a way to add value to them.
And that's where, as I'm working on my mentoring, that's how mentors brought it to me, was that you do business with people that you like and relationships. It's a lot easier to sell somebody or have somebody that's unhappy with you not leave you because you have a relationship. So as I'm working with the younger salespeople that we have now, they won't know the stuff that I've learned over 30 years in 3 months. It's just not going to happen. I can't transfer that much knowledge, but I can transfer knowledge like, how do you build a good relationship? One of them is, don't text them, don't call them, go see them.
Yeah.
Face to face, eye to eye. It's how you build stuff, because these people, you're making them make decisions that might be a risk for them. And a text doesn't satisfy that. Go talk to them, because once they see you and say, oh, this is the kind of person I could work with, or this person actually cares about what I do. And that's a big thing that I do a lot of times. And I'm working with the salespeople even here, is that learn your customers. Don't just go in there blindly. If he's a construction company, look him up. We got the internet now. Look.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Google Maps, everything.
Who is their dad? Who started the company? Who's the person running it? How are they doing? What equipment do they run? Learn about your customer, because I can't tell you how many people in a 5-minute conversation I've brought to our side because I could relate to things that I know they're running through. I even say, oh, I see you running CAT equipment, or, oh, I see you running Komatsu equipment. Have a discussion with them about their stuff, not just, oh, I'm here to sell you a product XYZ because I think it's the greatest product because it's got magic fairy dust and it works good. Because everybody tells them that. And that's how I try to coach the sales team a lot of times. You've got to remember, they got 10 salespeople a day coming in there, selling them everything. Yeah. You're just one of those people. So make an impact.
Yep.
Make an impact on that person. So you're not just some commodity that they're buying like light bulbs and pens. You're somebody that's there to help them, and you will do much better. Now, if the timing's not right, recognize that with them. Oh, you know, you've been using this Chevron or whoever, you know, another company for a long time. I understand that. But if anything ever changes, here I am.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times down the road something changes. Their supplier changes. They're not happy. And they call and say, hey, would at least like you to come in and quote.
Yeah.
You know,
or their strategy changes.
Or
the people change. There's a lot of changes. And I try to remind myself and everybody around me is we really get paid to solve problems. There are some rules that we all have to operate in, core values, the behaviors associated to those values. We have a strategic direction, right? And you want to make sure the right people are on the bus before you point the bus in that direction. But once you're headed that way, you have to solve problems along the way. We have internal problems that we need to solve. I love new problems. I don't like revisiting old problems because it's like the proverbial, we've climbed the mountain, we slid back down, and we got to do it again. That's frustrating. But new problems are exciting because you're like, great. Now we have to solve this problem. And we do the same thing for the customer base. Like, you're really there. We can give you price. We can give you product, right? And over time, you build a relationship. But as you're building that relationship and you're doing that research, try to identify the problems and challenges that they have. And if it's within our core competencies to help them solve it, that's how you're going to generate value. And you really can't get there unless you have a relationship. No one's going to open up to you about their business challenges if they don't trust you. So like you have to go over that hurdle first, and then you can get honest with each other and go, how do we fix these problems? And you're doing it together. And that's the type of customer that sticks around for a while, because they go, I see the value there. And it's not just that number on the piece of paper. It's about what we do together. And I think that goes a long way.
And you hit it on the head. The military, big thing in the military was always, don't have to fight for the same ground twice. If you make a gain,
take it, keep it.
Don't give it up, because you paid a price for that real estate to give it back, to retake it. And the same thought, it came from some of my mentors, and I have it. One of my screensavers is it, and it's Robert Duvall with some quote. But the quote in essence says is when I give you my time, it's the most precious commodity to me, because you're taking a piece of me with that. So if you don't use that wisely, you're really kind of giving me a negative, that it was the only thing that I had that you can't buy. All the money in the world can't buy time. There's not one person gets out, as we talk, no person gets out alive. I have a finite amount of time. So if I spend my time with you, it's the most precious commodity I have. So accept it as that. Take it as something that's precious, because it's all I got. It's the last thing I got to give. Yeah. So I use that, and that's why I'm always trying to be careful, because when I talk to customers, time is the only thing they don't have. All of them are typically under the gun. They have to get this equipment running, and they don't have enough time because everybody's asking them to do stuff for them. So if you can come to them from that standpoint and say, you know what I'm going to try to do for you? I'm going to try to give you some time back. I'm going to take my time and gift it to you. It's a strong message a lot of times. I can't tell you how many customers have came back to me and said, you did exactly what you said you was going to do. I don't have to spend time taking care of this. We used to call them alligators. The one I'll always tell them, tell me the one thing that you really hate. It's that alligator that's biting you. What machine's breaking down all the time and you don't think it should be breaking down? Give me that piece. If I can take that off of the sheet, then give me those.
The biggest, scariest alligator out there. And then we'll work through the rest of the alligators.
A lot of times, that's the conversation I have with the customers is time. Is, you like to see your family. I'm sure you'd like to not be at work 20 hours a day, called on weekends. So if I can give you some time, what's it worth to you?
Yeah.
And when you do it that way, a lot of times price never comes in. I very, very rarely talk about, well, here's the price of my product X, Y, or Z, because I'm giving them time. And a lot of times price is the last thing that comes out. And that's how I think, and especially in the modern world, you have to be a successful salesman, because they can shop price all day. They can click on their phone and say, well, here's the price at 5 places of your product or competitive product. So you can't sell on price. You have to sell on something they can relate to. And for me, time was always one of those first things I go to. What is it worth to you to not have this down all the time?
I couldn't agree more. Time is the most valuable commodity that we have.
And you appreciate it more now because you have family. When I didn't have a son, time, was just that. Now I find I do so much more to make sure I'm with my son for that specific parts of time.
Yeah.
I'm willing to work however many hours it is, but I will drive all night if I have to make sure I'm there for that 15 minutes that he's got available. So we spend that 15 minutes together. And that's the part I think my dad brought to me, that it's that unsaid stuff, but he called me this morning. Hey, how's your day going? Nobody else calls.
Yeah.
He called this morning. Hey, how's your day going? Because he's sitting at home with time.
Yeah.
Now he's retired. He's got time, and he's like, okay, how's
what's going on with Chuck today? Yeah.
How's he doing? Yeah. And that's where I think to be successful in this business, you have to appreciate other people's time. Don't get upset when they cancel meetings. Things happen. If they don't answer you right away, don't get upset. It's all about time.
Time's dynamic.
And your time is not as important to them until it is. And just like right now, I have customers calling me saying, Chuck, we need you here because I want your input on this application. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. I'll be there when you need me. And that's how you get these long-term customers. And without getting too far, like I say, customers that I picked up customers 20 years ago now that I know companies that are trying to get them for the last 15 years and like, oh man, that dang guy came in here and sold these guys on this product and we can't get them off it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I feel bad because now I work for the competition. I'm like, oh, but at the same time, you feel good.
Yeah.
It's like, because that guy believed in me that long ago, and he told two friends who told two friends, and they haven't switched in 15, 18 years. And I'm the one that told them. Now I'm trying to get them to convert to something else, So it's good.
Well, let's see. Time is I think a perfect segue as we kind of transition towards conclusion, because we've talked a little bit about, how your time was used in some of your past companies, and that there were times when you spent 42 weeks out of the year on the road in places as far as India and Morocco and South America. And there's big cultural differences between, let's say, like a major and a family-owned business, but there's also significant cultural differences when you're on the road and you're spending your time in these international markets. What's one of the craziest things you've had to deal with from a cultural standpoint when you're working at a market and you're not in America?
Probably the hardest thing goes back to, if you like family-owned companies, you're used to everybody wanting to pull one direction. When you go to other countries, the value of the person is not what it is in the United States. I was in several countries where literally we're driving down the highway, person on a bicycle's on the side of the road. A package truck drives by, hits them with a mirror, knocks them in the side of the road. Nobody stopped. Knocked him off the bicycle doing 60 miles an hour. Could have killed him, might have killed him. Nobody even stopped to check on him. We went down there. There was no value in the person. And that's hard if you come from the United States. We value everybody's opinion. You look at any newscast, we give everybody the right to speak their opinion, and the military's big about it. Hey, we fought for that right. You could say anything you want, even if people don't want to hear it, it's your right.
Especially if people don't want to hear it.
You can do it, and you can be on the news and say it. It could be totally wrong. They'll let you say it.
It's your right to say it.
But in other countries, that's not true. There was countries I was in, and China's a good example. Scared to death to say one thing bad about the government. You say something wrong with the government, they come and take you. It's that simple. They'll come and you'll be gone. No one's heard from you. There's other countries that are developing countries. They haven't figured out the value of the people. To give a really short story, I was at a mine in India. They had a guy out there that his only job was to put flags on trucks as they went into the pit. If you're familiar with mining equipment, you have to have a buggy whip flag to signify. He sat out there on a metal chair with an umbrella. It was 130-degree heat. And all day in this dust, trucks would come by, he put a flag on it. Trucks came by, he took a flag off. I'm like, how did the guy get that job? He needed a job. I'm like, but nobody cares about that guy because they didn't even give him really a shelter, or he's not in a clean air environment. He's just sitting there, dust and smog coming by him. He puts a flag on in a metal chair. I was like, wow, that wouldn't happen where I'm at.
Yeah.
That had some nice ergonomic chair and a nice butt and stuff like that. So the value wasn't there. I'm like, they didn't treat this person like he had much value. But for him, it was the job, and it paid his family to eat stuff. So he did it. He did it because that's his back.
And it's a different culture, too. You're limited with your options. They don't value, I would say, castes or different types of people the same way that you do in the United States. So I'd imagine if your time is being spent in those areas of the world and those environments and that cultural divide, that could probably wear on you.
It was definitely a change for me because I would get scolded because I would give a tip to somebody. But I didn't know it was such a bad thing. But somebody bring me an ice cream, I'd give him $1, and the guy would correct me. He's like, "Oh, you can't give him $1. That's a week's wages here. American dollar, that's a week's wages for him." I'm like, but it had little value to me. It was $1.
And he did a good job, and I wanted to say thank you.
Brought me an ice cream in 130-degree heat. I was very thankful. Like, oh, we can't do that because now I only expect this $1. I was like, okay. So I listened to what the person said. I said, thank you very much. And every day I gave this guy $1. I was like, keep that $1. If $1 is a week's wages for you, I would gladly give you $1 each and every day. And surprisingly, when I'd get to my hotel room, there was 2 scoops of ice cream and a nice ice cold Coke sitting in my room. I was like, for $1, I'll do that every time. But it's just that difference when you travel international and stuff. And you have to accept how they live and where they live. I would eat food in India, Morocco, places I would never eat in the States, but that's what they're eating. I can tell you a quick story. I was in Morocco, and the mine had one restaurant, and it closed. It was only open from 11 to noon. So if you worked while they was at lunch, you didn't get lunch. So we ate what we call roadside stands. I don't know if they have them in Vegas, but it's pretty much a person with a barbecue grill outside on the highway, and truck drivers would stop and pick it up. And the first day we got there, and the guy had lamb's liver, but he's in a hurry. So he's cooking 6 of these at a time, and he would put them on the grill. They'd sizzle for about 5 seconds, turn it over, sizzle 5 seconds, and he'd plate it to you. So you're having rare to medium rare lamb's liver, and everybody else is eating it. So you just ate it. Next day come by, he's got lamb's heart. I was like, okay, medium rare lamb's heart. I was like, have no idea how healthy a lamb is or what could possibly be in this food, but I'm eating it, and he's bringing you out the bread, and it's got 100 flies on it, and he shoves them off and hands you this tortilla thing. And I'm like, just block it all out and eat.
Yeah.
So the third day, I'm like, we're not going to stop there because I'm worried what
organ am I eating today?
I'm not spaghetti. Today I'm kind of full. So, but that was one of them culture things, I was like, wow, this is how these people, they live all the time. And I got home and they're like, oh, you should have just not ate. I'm like, well, it was the only food for 100 miles and everybody in the party's eating it. So I was like, okay, I'm not above them. Let's just eat it. But it was a bonding moment. Those guys went to the mat for me from that point on. They're like, oh, if he'll eat that, then he's
on the team.
We'll work 10 hours with this guy. They'd stay out there and just work all night. So I was like, well, that's good. I got in the club that way. But I can tell you the whole time I was like, okay, what possibly, I'm almost trying to look stuff up on Google. What can you get from raw lamb's liver?
Yeah. What ailments?
You start feeling like, oh, I have an itch. So it seems interesting. But the greatest thing about this job has been that I've been to the Arctic Circle. I've been with Eskimos up in the Arctic Circle at 70 below, where they were giving me whale's blubber that they, in essence, if you're a Spanish person, you know what a chicharron is. They would take whale's blubber and put it in some boiling fat and serve it to you. So it was like a crispy chicharron, except it was like eating your shoe because it was thick, about an inch thick. And but that's all she had.
Yeah.
And I needed it. And say 70 below. And I've been all the remote places in the world. They do mining in places that they don't have cities. So I've met people, and it goes back down to people. I've met Eskimos and Inuits and stuff that they've lived there for thousands of years. As a country, the United States is kind of unique. When I traveled the world, they're like, okay, well, what was where you lived 200 years ago? I said, nothing. What do you mean, nothing? I'm in a restaurant in China that it's been this guy's family for 400 years. This restaurant, his whole family has to work in this restaurant. It's their restaurant for 400 years. Well, what was in your area that you grew up that time? I said, well, it was just dirt. We had some Native Americans that came around as seasons, and they would live there in like a teepee temporarily, but there wasn't a permanent structure where I was at. You go back 200 years. Like, well, somebody had to live there. No, there was nobody. For them, it was such a foreign concept. Somebody had to live there. Nope. There wasn't anybody.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't comprehend. I said, and when you go to these places, say you go to Rome or stuff, they don't even stop for stuff that's only 200 years old. They're like, yeah, that's the stuff that was built 400 years ago. That's pretty much like new architecture. We don't even stop for that. So for me, it's interesting to come from the United States. We have very, very little history, and we tear it down all the time. In my hometown, if the house is 100 years old, like, oh, woo, it's 100 years old. Let's tear that thing down and we'll put a new modern house up. And you go to these countries and then they're thousands of years. And for me, that was probably the most interesting part of this job is I'm like, if I got to be there 2 weeks, what's there? Yeah. I would Google and research, and I can't tell you how many places it'd be like say I was in Constantinople 2 years ago now. I'm like, so this is where the Crusaders started, right? So I was interested in that. Okay. So I'm going like through the Bible. Okay. What towns, like acres of what towns around the way? And like, oh yeah, that town's right. It's over here. It's like 10 miles. You want to go see it? I'm like, yeah. This is a town in the Bible.
Yeah. Thousands and thousands of years ago.
Let's go by there. Now, does it look like a town? No, but you're there.
Yeah.
It is such a neat thing that said your job allowed you to go where tourists were paying thousands of dollars. This is your job. I'm driving right past places that were in the Bible or were in the Crusades and all those kind of things. And for me, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed that aspect of the job. It's just that eventually father time is catching up to me a little bit, and I couldn't be away as long. I have family commitments, have a son. They need you home. So I can't just be a world traveler. So I've came full circle, I guess, is what I'm getting at with that, is that I grew up where I was just in the same 23 miles. I didn't move from this 23 miles. This is the land. This is our spot. You don't move from here. And that's where my dad's lived. My dad has been within that same little part of land. And a quick story on that. I had a competition a long time ago when I was in college down in San Antonio, Texas. And it was for Texas Instruments. They'd done this competition. I had to go down there and compete. So I called my grandfather up, who lived in a town called Goldthwaite, Texas, which is west of Austin. I said, hey, I'm going to be in San Antonio. I have no idea, because they didn't have Google back then or maps and stuff. How far is it? I'll drive up and see you, because I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he's in his 90s. He goes, well, I don't know. I guess, you never been to San Antonio? No. According to my Brandon McNally map, it's like 130 miles. He goes, nope, never been there. I say, you never been 130 miles south of your house? Nope. Okay. It's just like, and then he's like, yeah, I went to Austin once. He went to Austin like in the 50s. I was like, so Austin's 80 miles away to the east. You've been there once in 90 years. He said, yep. Said he's lived his entire life here. And then he'd come see us up in Colorado every, in summers. They would get in a big old Texas Cadillac. And this is when I was young. This guy was already now in his late 70s and 80s. And they would drive up and stay with us in the summers. Yeah. And just to be around the family and stuff. So he was pretty much the only grandfather that I really knew that way. So I was like, and you've never been the 80 miles south. You drive 1,000 miles to us, but you've never been south. He said, never had a reason to go there. I was like,
fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was that mentality I grew up in. And I was like, I got to be different. I want to see.
You went 180 degrees the opposite direction. You've been everywhere.
I've been everywhere. And I've really enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed just the history that I see when I'm there. It gives me something to focus on when I'm there besides just work. But now I've came full circle. I'm back to.
I think we look at traveling similarly. A lot of my travel has been work related as well. And I'm not as well traveled as you, but I've, worked in different environments in, South America, UK, Europe. The two things, I always come away with appreciation, but in two different ways, right? Like I appreciate the history and aspects of the culture. There's always unique things that you like about the culture. There's things that you don't like about the culture. And then when I get home, I really appreciate being in the United States. Yeah. Greatest country on earth. And it doesn't mean that I don't love Ireland and the UK and Italy and Brazil and all these other places I've been to. I love going there. I love traveling there. I love learning about their long history, because America is a young country. But when I get back to America, I'm like, this is God's country. So speaking, keeping on the topic of time and getting away from work and the career in the industry, what are you looking forward to at the time you have left? Because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Particularly with family. You got any exciting things coming up?
Well, for me, like I say, trying to mentor my son, trying to give him the opportunity to make mistakes and grow from them mistakes is probably the easiest thing for me, hardest thing for my wife, family to do, because they want to correct things right away. I'm like, they're a kid. They have to experience some pain. If your children don't experience any pain, then they don't learn from those kind of things. So there's going to be some pain. So I'm trying to let him do those kind of things. And he's changed so much. I recommended that he work in a restaurant. He hadn't ever worked. We never had him work. He's had it pretty easy. He did a lot of sports and stuff. So he had an excuse not to. But when he got out of doing sports, I said, okay, you need to get a job and work. And I said, if I was you and got a job, I would go into the restaurant business, because what he'd like to be is a doctor of physical therapy. And I said, much like what you're trying to go into is what Dad does. No customer ever calls me and says, hey, having a great day. Thought I'd share it with you. We're having the best day, best quarter we've ever had. Thought I'd just share it with you. Normally I get everybody's bad day. Something broke down. They're in trouble. The company's losing money. They're having a really bad day. My job is not to bring them to happiness, but to get them back to middle ground. So I spent 30 years working that technique. I said, you have to learn to deal with all kinds of people that are having really rough days. And if you're going to be a doctor of physical therapy, I'm going to tell you something. They're not going to be happy people. They're going to be people that their bones aren't working, and you're going to make them do things with their bones and their body and their joints that they're not going to be happy with. So you're going to have to deal with people, and you can't text them. You can't text them and tell them, oh, I'll do this and have them do it. So I said, you need to go in and work into the restaurant field or something like that, where you have a lot of experience talking to people and trying to get them to be happy and bring them food. And if the food's not right and they're unhappy about it, you're going to have to deal with it. You can't blame the cook.
Yeah.
You're the person that they see. You're the person with the eyes to eyes. And he has probably changed 100%. In the last year and a half, he has such a different personality because now he's working in that service industry where it's not his fault. He'd love to blame the cook, but it's not his fault. But he takes the blame. He's like, I'll make it right.
Yeah.
I will do what I can to make it right. We're sorry that's how it happened. And I think that's going to help set him up for the career that he chose. So for me, that's really, really good. And then on the back side of that, I know we talked about it a little bit. I don't take many vacations. Knock on wood. Haven't had a sick day in, probably 25 years.
That's that lamb's liver for you. Yeah.
Exactly. So very, very healthy. My dad is 79, going to be 80 soon. His body is deteriorating. He used his body up to help supply me the opportunities. You can't swing in the sledgehammer for years and years and not have just joint issues and stuff. And one of his things that he brought up, way back in my youth, he always wanted to go fishing a certain lake in Montana. So this year, my brother-in-law, he's like, hey, what should we buy your dad for Father's Day? I said, you know what I would do? Let's get him out of the house because he'll never go willingly. He's became a homebody where he's just like, if it isn't Walmart, he doesn't need it. He treks over to Walmart, walks around the house, looks at stuff, and he don't buy nothing most of the time, just walking around. So I said, let's offer him that. And when we brought it up to him, he's like, oh, no, that's just too far. Ooh, it's like 1,000 miles. And I'm like, Dad, I drive 1,000 miles. After lunch, I'm working on an average week. That's just an afternoon drive for me, He said, oh, it's just too far. It's too far. But the more he thought about it, he's like, we could do that. And my brother-in-law's like, hey, I'll take him up in a fifth wheel so he can just ride. You don't have to drive. You can ride with me. Okay, sounds great. And then my dad calls me when he goes, hey, how are we going to get a boat up there? So we're not getting a boat, Dad. We're going first class. We're going to rent. We got a guide. He's got a boat. We're just going to sit on his boat and he's going to take us where the fish are. This is all he does. He's probably going to be pretty good at it. He's like, well, we've never done that. Yeah, well, let's do it. So, okay, we got a boat. And then he calls me up like a week later. Hey, you think there'll be a place we can fish from the shore? That when we're not on the boat and we're just sitting there at night, we can fish? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, Dad, they allow fishing at this lake on the shore. You can bring your own stuff. And then he just took off. His eyes just lit up. He's like, oh, he spent 2 weeks trying to get fishing gear ready for this lake now. So he's getting his personal gear. But it's like it never struck him that, hey, we could probably fish at this lake that you're taking me to for 3 days. I was like, yeah, Dad, I'm pretty sure you could just throw a line right in.
Yeah.
They don't stop it. And it really took off. And now he's just looking forward to it. He's just counting down the minutes. He's just waiting. My mom said he's already packed, ready to go. Got his gear in the living room already. Got to walk around it to go in and out of the house. I was like, that's good. That makes me feel good because whether we catch fish or not, it's going to be a good time for us. And I feel bad a little bit. It may be the last time. You don't know. We never know.
Never know.
But I know his health isn't as good as it used to be, and it could be. So I want to take this as an opportunity just to repay some of the debt back to my dad. I'm like, hey, let's go enjoy some time on a boat, and
while we got it,
yeah, because you never know, So it's a good time for me because I can pay it back, and that's what jobs like this do for you.
Yeah,
and I've tried to tell my son, if you get paid to do a job you enjoy, put that money away. And then when you want to do stuff like that, that's what you're doing the job for. Take those little bits of time and say, hey, let's go someplace, do something that the average person that's just punching the clock, he can't do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the world can't take a vacation and go places because they don't have the funds or whatever.
Yeah, the resources, the means, or the time. Well, I can't think of a better way to spend your time than to do a bucket list opportunity like that with your dad. And before we finish, I couldn't agree more on the restaurant aspect and your suggestion to your son. My wife and I feel the same way. I bussed tables when I was in college, and she served at a restaurant. I worked at a nightclub, so I dealt with the worst of the worst, people just out of their minds. They don't treat you well. And my wife was a server at a restaurant. But we both agreed that when our kids are old enough and they want to go get a job, you should get a job, a hospitality related job, because if anything, it makes you appreciate people, because you do have times when you get treated horribly and it doesn't feel good. And when you're on the other side of that table and you're the one ordering the food or ordering the drink, you treat them properly. Yep. I'm not saying empathy. You have a lot more empathy. And it's a pet peeve of her and I, because we do treat the service industry really well. I like to tip well. If the service is horrible, maybe I won't give a tip, but I'm not barking orders at them or being rude to them or just overly demanding. They're not my personal assistant. They're there to help me with a meal. And when we go out to dinner with people, you can tell the people that have never worked in that type of environment, because they don't treat people right. And I personally don't like going to dinner with people like that. I'm like, I don't want to go here and have an amazing meal and just watch you be rude to someone that's, doing their job. So I would agree when my daughters are old enough, go out and work that job, right? You'll appreciate people a whole lot more.
It really humbles you that, hey, there's going to be things that happen to you in life. It's not your fault, but you're going to take the blame for it. And how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
It's another kind of stress.
Face to face, how do you deal with that?
You can't hide. You can't sneak in the back and send someone else out. You got to face that person. Yeah. And I think that's a good skill everybody should go through, because it changes you as a person. You'll find that you're not as aggressive when it's on the other side. When you're at the table and your order's not right, you see me, I eat anything, like, I'll just eat it.
Yeah.
Even if they mess it up, I'll eat it. It's okay. And
it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world, because again, it goes back to your time. Are you there typically, just like us, if you're there for your family environment, that's the time you want. Do you really care about the food? The food is nice. It's that interaction. It's the stories that your children are telling you and stuff. That's what's important. That's what you'll remember.
Not how well good or how well done the steak was, or how good the service was.
You went to Del Frisco's and that was the greatest steak you ever had, but you'll remember that you shared it, and that's the great thing. If I would have known when I had my son how much I'd enjoyed him, we would have had more, but we didn't take the time. Both my wife and I had very, very stressful jobs. That's why I took hobbies up that would help me relieve stress. I had to have something that took me out of that. So I took other hobbies and stuff up. And now that we had a child, that's all we think about. We do everything for the child. It's, everything in his life was all, we based everything we did around that child. So I would love to have had more. I wish I would have. That would have been one of the things, if I could take it back, I would have had more, because they're a fantastic addition to your life.
100%. And whether you have one child or 15, because I'm at an age where a lot of our friends are, married now, having kids, and some of them don't have kids. So they oftentimes reach out as a resource. What's the biggest difference? And the one thing that I would say to people as they're having those kids, whether it's 1 or 15, it really is the reason why you do everything. Before kids, it's different. After kids, why'd you get up early and work out? Well, yeah, I want to be in shape, but really I want to be around for my kids. Why are you eating healthy? Well, yeah, I don't want to have ailments and diseases and all that, but why? Yeah. What am I trying to stick around to where I'm 85 years old for? Because I want to be there for my daughters when they're adults and when they have kids, and I want to be a papa one day. Like, it's the reason I go to work. Like, I don't need to make all the world in the money, but I do need to make enough money so that we can live a life that's comfortable. And my comfortable is not Rockefeller's comfortable. Right. It's whatever works for you, but it is really the reason why you do everything.
And that you hit it right on the head there. I don't eat that second donut because I'm like, I'd like to see my child's middle age. I want to see him go through when his body's not 100%. Because right now he's rock star.
Yeah,
he's 6'3", 225.
He's bulletproof. Right?
Life everything. He's gonna live forever. Yeah, I'd like to see him when the body starts to deteriorate a little bit.
Yeah.
And for me to do that, I could live in my 80s. So like, okay,
what can I do today to get there?
What can I do today to make sure that unless, something dramatic happens, I'm going to plan for that. I'm going to like, okay, how do I live to be in my 80s? Well, that's setting up a good body. What do I got to do to make sure I stay healthy and things like that? And So it's good, but it's a good motivator, because, I've had that conversation with my son, everything I own belongs to you someday. Don't come get it right away. But it's all going to be yours. So don't be scared. And that's one of the conversations I had with him. If you need something, sell something of mine. I don't care. It's going to be yours again anyway. So if you need it now, it's like pulling out of the family bank.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, Dad, you really need that many shotguns? Because I have a lot of shotguns. I'm like, hey, I don't need that many. If you need something, we'll sell one of them and we'll buy it now because you're going to get that down the road anyway. I'd rather you have it now while you have a chance to change your past. We talk about past. If I can affect you now, and it's the same thing like salespeople, if I can affect you now and it changes your path, then I succeeded in what I was trying to do. If I let it go till your path can't change or you've gone down a bad path for a long time, then that's on me that I didn't make an improvement in your life or help you in your life when I could have. So I want to get you started right, because that's all I got. I won't be here to see the end typically.
Yeah.
You're going to be around a lot longer than me, and you're going to get to see the end. I don't get to see that part of the movie. I get to see the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a big part of that. So I live that way. There's nothing that I wouldn't give to them. And that's just people. For example, this week, we had a person retire, and he was a huge USC Trojan fan. And he was also a Los Angeles Raiders fan and a Las Vegas Raiders fan. I had a playing card that I'd had for 30 years that was just stuck in one of my bins, and it was a Ronnie Lott signature card. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to give that to him. I forgot it last week. And he says, what would like it more is my son who works for this company. Huge, huge Raiders fan. So I made the point this week to go in and give it to him. And I played it off. I was like, oh yeah, I just got this card. It's some guy that played at USC. He was a decent football player. His eyes lit up. I almost thought he was going to cry.
Yeah.
This is a Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, so it meant something to him. It changes his path.
That memory will mean a lot more to him and you than how many gallons we sold this year.
It changed his path.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
Chuck, thank you for doing this. I hope fly fishing with your dad goes well, and I hope you enjoy every minute you get with your son.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Jobbers, American Energy. If today's episode gave you a new perspective or reminded you why this work matters, leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. It really does help support the show. For more episodes and resources, visit jobberspodcast.com. Until next time.